Namaste and hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel Hamsavahini Vajraasthra. I'm Awhona. In today's video, I'm going to make a quick book recommendation for the upcoming Nightingale August Challenge Readathon. And I've just posted the video recently for this particular readathon's announcement, and I will leave a link to this video in the description box below. So let me just get down to the book recommendations, and do please join me further in this video. So today I'm going to share the book recommendations for the minimum requirement for participation, and for that you have to just read two books. So the first is that you have to read a non-fiction book about Florence Nightingale, and the second is you have to read a nursing fiction book which has Florence Nightingale as the main protagonist, or is inspired by the life of Florence Nightingale, or has the word Nightingale in its title, or has the protagonist who would either work with Florence Nightingale later on in the plot or is somehow related to her. So I will just share my book recommendations for the minimum requirement for participation in this particular video. Now for the challenges, I will share more book recommendations in a later video, because doing the challenges is absolutely optional. It is not a mandate, but if you would like to have fun, or if you would like to explore more into the Victorian medical history, you definitely can go for it. So today I'm just going to cover up the book recommendations which are required for minimum participation. So the first book that I would recommend is a very short book on Florence Nightingale, which is written by Hugh, and this is a brief history of Florence Nightingale and her real legacy, a revolution in public health. So it's a very short book, as you can see, and from the back of the book it reads as: the true legacy of Florence Nightingale, how she used a sanitary disaster in her wartime hospital to bring about life-saving public health reforms at home. Florence Nightingale remains a controversial figure today. At the peak of her fame, recently returned from the Crimean War at the age of 37, she suffered a mental and physical collapse and then took to bed for 10 years. Despite being bedridden, she worked obsessively for social reform. At the end of the war, in a bid to reduce the influence of the Army High Command, the government had asked Florence Nightingale to investigate the death of 16,500 soldiers from the effects of starvation and exposure on the front line. In doing so, however, she found that her hospital had effectively been a death camp, and it was the government's neglect of the hospital hygiene, not the army's incompetence, that had caused so many deaths. The government refused to release this information, but, heedless of her own reputation, Nightingale leaked a report showing how the truth had been suppressed. She became a leader of a public health movement which succeeded in significantly reducing the very high mortality from the epidemic disease in the civilian population. So this is a very short book. It is not exactly about the life of Florence Nightingale, of course. So it's about her main achievements and how she dealt with the flaws which were which caused the death of many soldiers during the Crimean War, of course. So this is the first book that I would recommend, and since it's short, it could be easily completed within a month's span of time. So that would be the first book. Now, the second book that I would recommend is a mammoth of a book. So if you like details, this is the book for you. And this is Florence Nightingale, The Woman and Her Legend, a biography by Mark Bostridge, as you can see over here. So I had read this book last year for Nightingale August Challenge 2020, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm not too sure whether I'll be picking up this book because I always love learning new things. But yes, I do have a book of an equivalent size in one of the challenges which I plan to read, but I'm not too sure about it. So let's see. However, from the back of this book, it reads as: from her tireless campaigning to her tortured relationship with her sister, this vivid and immensely readable biography draws on a wealth of unpublished material. Whether honoured and admired or criticised and ridiculed, Florence Nightingale has invariably been misinterpreted and misunderstood. As the lady with the lamp ministering to the wounded and dying of the Crimean War, I'm sorry, I'll just read that out again. As the lady with the lamp ministering to the wounded and the dying of the Crimean War, she offers an enduring image of sentimental appeal and one that is permanently lodged in our national consciousness. But, as Mark Bostridge shows in this masterful biography, the awesome scale of her achievement over the course of 90 years is infinitely more inspiring than this mythical simplification. So this has won a couple of awards as well, and it's an authentic biography, and there's a lot of details which have not been explored in the other books of Florence Nightingale, and it gives a detailed synopsis of things from Florence Nightingale's point of view. And this is another book that I would recommend for non-fiction about Florence Nightingale. So now let's come to the third book. The third book is called God's Servant at the Battlefield, Florence Nightingale, written by David R. Collins. Now this is actually for high school students, but I did read this last year, and it is all about how the spirituality of Florence Nightingale and her Christian faith actually helped her to serve the higher purpose of healing the wounded soldiers during the Crimean War. So for her, nursing was God's call to service. So from the back of the book, it reads as: Christian character, a most precious gift. Read for yourself from the actual pen of these noted people from world history, of their relationship to Jesus Christ and how that relationship affected their decisions and the course of human history. See history come alive, learn of the many hidden facts involving famous men and women from the pages of their diaries, letters to friends, books they wrote, etc. Quickly turn to the front cover to read more, etc. And this is written for high school students, of course, but it is really a very good book, and it does show the deep relationship which Florence Nightingale had with God. So it's really interesting. I did read this last year, and this would be the third book which I would recommend, because it's not exactly about the life of Florence Nightingale, but just a part of her. So that will be my third book which I would recommend. Now the fourth book which I would recommend, which is non-fiction, is called No Place for Ladies, which has been written by Helen Rappaport. Now this book is actually excellent, and I really loved reading this book. So it's the untold story of women in the Crimean War. So this covers not only Florence Nightingale, but it does cover the women who were wives of army officers, I would say the forgotten wives or the secret wives of the army officers who had married in secret. There were also, I would say, army officers, army soldiers. There was also a lot which is written about Florence Nightingale, the nuns who joined her in healing the sick in the Crimean War, and there's a lot about Mary Seacole and a lot about the nurses who were on the other side of the war, that is the Russian nurses and doctors. So a lot has been written, so it is, I wouldn't say that this is exactly about Florence Nightingale, but this could be used in any of the challenges. I believe in challenge number 2, where you have you can cover up Mary Seacole, who is a contemporary of Florence Nightingale. You could cover up Florence Nightingale herself. There are other nurses whom you could cover up, but this is a very good book. So from the jacket of this book, it reads as, on the 28th of February 1854, the Scots Fusilier Guards marched past Buckingham Palace, resplendent in full regalia, en route to the Crimea, as Queen Victoria bowed and waved proudly from the balcony. Day after day there were anxious farewells as husbands, sons and fathers set off to the war, leaving their women to face bleak, uncertain futures. As school children, we learned the story of Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp who tended the sick so heroically during the Crimean War, but she was not the only woman who played her part. In No Place for Ladies, respected historian Helen Rappaport shows that the numerous women from all social classes were actively engaged in the Crimean War, often in the most surprising ways, such as the vast number of women, including Queen Victoria herself, who knitted warm clothing to cheer the soldiers besieging Sevastopol during the freezing Crimean winter. 4 wives would be chosen to accompany each regiment, enduring an unpleasant passage on the vermin-ridden troop ships, and then left to fend for themselves amid the barren Crimean terrain, many to be widowed and abandoned to their fate. Yet the suffering of the soldiers' wives left behind in Britain was more and terrible. Alone and frequently destitute, they were left in agonies of wanting to hear whether their husbands were alive or dead. Meanwhile, at Scutari, Florence Nightingale battled to bring order to her unruly and often hard-drinking nurses, having rejected the services of the maverick black nurse Mary Seacole, who bucked the system and set up her own dispensary in the Crimea. French front lines also benefited from the presence of women enlivened by the coquettish cannoneers in their snappy uniforms, ever ready with their bidons of wine and water for the wounded. And then there were the lady battlefield tourists for whom military engagement satisfied temporarily their cravings for romance and excitement. Based on dozens of rare and often unpublished accounts, No Place for Ladies is a rich, colorful and fascinating picture of very different women at war. So this is one of the books that I would recommend. However, the main chunk of it is although about women who were contributing in the Crimean War and the plight of women who were on the battlefield and who were serving in the who were serving behind the scenes on the battlefield, or who were healing the wounded, or those who were left behind in Britain and their plight. So this is something which is given very well. Now, there is a lot about Florence Nightingale which is written, so you may include this in the first challenge to read something about Florence Nightingale which is non-fiction. However, this goes better with another challenge, which is challenge number 3, I believe, which is to read about Mary Seacole and other contemporaries of Florence Nightingale. So this would go very well with it because about Mary Seacole there's not much written in this book, but the main chunk is about Florence Nightingale, so you definitely can include this in the first section as well. So this would be my, I believe, 4th recommendation. Now, the 5th recommendation which I would make is called Florence Nightingale and the Viceroys, which has been written by Patricia Mowbray. And from the back of the book it reads as, she had gained her independence, though it was in a meager sphere enough, and her mother was still not quite resigned. Surely Florence might at least spend the summer in the country. At times, indeed, among her intimates, Mrs. Nightingale almost wept. "We are ducks," she said, with tears in her eyes, "who have hatched a wild swan." But the poor lady was wrong. It was not a swan they had hatched, it was an eagle. So this is all about the correspondence and the way in which Florence Nightingale tried to improve the sanitation, not only in Crimea but in other parts of the world. For example, in India as well, she was in correspondence with the viceroys, and she was trying to communicate through the War Office directly, so that she could improve the conditions of the soldiers in India as well. And a lot of the public health standards in India is based on the original system, which has been laid out by Florence Nightingale. Now, this is what it reads from the jacket and from the back of the book. And from the jacket, it reads as: Florence Nightingale's legendary nursing service in the Crimean War brought her fame and power, but relates to just 2 years out of her life of 90 years. This study reveals an aspect of her life that has been largely overlooked, namely her profound influence on the health and the welfare of the Indian people during the latter half of the 19th century. Florence Nightingale's comprehensive statistical survey of the conditions in the military barracks in India revealed a pressing need for the improved sanitation, drainage and pure water, not only in the soldiers' overcrowded quarters, but in the villages and bazaars in close proximity to the barracks and further afield in the teeming cities of the subcontinent. She enlisted the help of many prominent men as her sanitarians, but much of the improvement in medical and public health services in India during the imperial heyday of the Raj can be traced to her close, if sometimes challenging, relationship with a series of viceroys from Lord Canning in 1858 to Lord Elgin in 1898. This biography relates the trials and triumphs of Florence Nightingale's last great humanitarian campaign. So this is one of the books that I'm quite interested in reading, and Florence Nightingale has done a lot for the Indian sanitation and hygiene systems as well as the public health services. So let me see if I can include this in my TBR. In fact, I am planning to include this in my TBR this year. So this is one of the other books that I would recommend. So the last book that I would recommend today is this big book, which is called Florence Nightingale, Mystic Visionary Healer by Barbara Montgomery Dossa. As you can see over here, I'm sorry the light is shining on it, but this is the name of the book and the author, and it's a pretty heavy book, so I believe you would find this only in the libraries. Now, from the back of the book, or from the jacket of the book, it reads as: the name Florence Nightingale conjures up a romantic image of the lady with the lamp who founded the modern nursing. However, this image trivializes the accomplishments and characters of one of the most remarkable women of the 19th century. Few people are aware that Nightingale was a trailblazing social activist and visionary whose ideas of such matters as public health and sanitation, holistic health, and women's place in society were decades ahead of their time. In a world where women were banned from universities and medical experts believed that too much learning would impair a woman's reproductive function, Nightingale received the equivalent of a Cambridge education from her father. In a time when ladies were seen as delicate creatures, unfit to make their own decisions and in need of male protection, Nightingale battled the elite of the British Army and government to improve the squalid conditions of soldiers and the common people, thereby laying the foundation for modern public health and sanitation practices. Born into the British high society, where well-bred young ladies were expected only to marry well, she rejected marriage and a life of idleness to seek a meaningful vocation for herself. and in the process established the first respectable profession for women. Florence Nightingale, mystic visionary healer, reveals the many facets of this complex, brilliant woman, including her little known but fascinating mystical side, which inspired all her achievements, and her early support of the Indian nationalist movement. This dazzling new biography, throughout thoroughly researched and lavishly illustrated with more than 280 photographs and sketches, is a testament to a woman who not only changed the world in her lifetime but also continues to speak to us today. So this is a really fascinating book, and there are a lot of illustrations and photographs which are given in this book. So this is just a random pick that I'm doing of the photographs. There are wonderful photographs in this book, and I had been trying to acquire this book for quite some time. So this is during the Crimean War, of course, and you do have a lot and a very realistic picture of Florence Nightingale given in this book. So I would suggest that in case if you can get your hands on this book, do please pick up this book. You probably will find it in your library, but this is an excellent book for reading this year. So those are my recommendations for the non-fiction section. Now, so those are some of the books in the non-fiction section. Now let me just get down to the books for the nursing fiction section. Now for the nursing fiction section, those books which have Florence Nightingale as the main protagonist. So I do have a series with me, and this has been written by Barbara Silkstone. It is Florence Nightingale mystery series, and it's a comedy mystery series. So from the back of the book, it reads as: a trailblazing figure in nursing, Florence Nightingale faces a series of bizarre mysteries for which she must use her nimble deductive powers while aided by her little pocket owl, Athena, and her sweet but snarky sidekick, Poppy Throckmorton. In this first book of the series, the lady's journey to Greece on a mission for young Queen Victoria, the successful completion of which will fund the Nightingale School for Lady Nurses, the first of its kind in England. So this is the first book which Barbara Silkstone has written. So there are two other books in this series, and here Florence Nightingale is the main protagonist. So this is called The Killer Corset. And from the back of the book, it reads as: when a Buckingham Palace lady-in-waiting is killed, Poppy Throckmorton is up to her crinolines helping her mentor, Florence Nightingale, solve the murder. But in tracking the clues, they uncover a plot to kill Queen Victoria herself. So that will be the plot for the second mystery. And the third mystery in this series is called The Cheeky Corona. And it's a very short book, but from the back it reads as: there's a royal coroner at the Buckingham Palace, and he foolishly fancies Florence Nightingale. As Poppy Throckmorton chronicles her mentor's attempts to sell the rare emeralds given her by Queen Victoria, another mysterious death is attributed to the jewel. Florence and Poppy must find the murderer before more victims fall prey to the glittering green stone. Clean and Wholesome, The Cheeky Corona is book 3 in the Florence Nightingale comedy mystery series. So this is something which I'm looking forward to read. I could not read this last year because I could not acquire the books in time, and after that I haven't really looked into these books, but then this will be an opportunity for me to read this series or complete this series. Now the next would be where we have a nursing fiction in which we have the word Nightingale written on it, in its title, sorry. So the first book which I have is by Holly Green, and it's called Workhouse Nightingale. And in this, from the back of the book, it reads as: will this orphan escape the workhouse and make a better life for herself? After her mother's untimely death, Dora is sent to live with her father and his other family. But Dora is mixed race and illegitimate, two facts which see her treated as little more than a servant. This doesn't stop the son of the household abusing his position, and Dora soon finds herself on the streets and pregnant. Sent to the local workhouse, Dora's future looks bleak, but she still dreams of a better life, where she can help ease the suffering of others as her late mother did. But can a workhouse girl achieve anything, let alone become one of Florence Nightingale's nurses? So it does also fulfill the criteria of the protagonist working on later with Florence Nightingale and being related to her. So this is one of the books that I would suggest. The second book that I would suggest is a series which is called The Nightingale Girls by Donna Douglas. So I do have the series behind me over here. Okay, so I'm not going to read out from the entire series, but this is all about the institute which Florence Nightingale had opened in England, and this is the story where where different women meet to train as a nurse, and the plight which they have, and the circumstances which they find themselves in during the late Victorian age, or maybe a little away from the late Victorian. Actually, it's 1930, so it's not the Victorian age, of course, but something which is post Victorian age, of course. So this is something which I found very interesting, and I did read this book, but this was just the first in the series. Now I have the 8 books which are present over here, and I hope I'll be able to read at least one of them. So that will be another recommendation. So you could have anything from the 8. However, if you would like me to show you the 8, do please let me know in the comments. I definitely would share a video with it, because it's going to take a long time. Now the third book, which has Nightingale in its title, is called Miss Nightingale's Nurses by Kate Eastham, and from the back of the book it reads as: from the docks of Liverpool to a distant battlefield, can one girl find her brother and save herself? Ada Hoston's life is shattered when her brother Frank goes missing following an accident at the docks, but a short time later she hears a rumour that he survived and left Liverpool to fight a foreign war. Determined not to lose him a second time, she boards a ship to bring him home, but the battlefields of Crimea are a hostile place for a penniless young woman. A lifeline is thrown her way when she is offered the chance to train as a nurse under the famous Florence Nightingale. Working in the most terrible of conditions, Ada shows an aptitude beyond anyone's expectations as she cares for her injured countrymen, makes new friends, and enjoys the first flutter of romance. But Frank is still missing and she needs to find him before it's too late. So this is another book which is fulfilling both the criteria. So this would be my other suggestion. So and those would be the books for the nursing fiction section, which fulfills all the criteria. Also, last year, Janelle from Too Fond of Books had participated in this readathon, and she had found out another mystery series of Florence Nightingale, and I would recommend if you could kindly check her TBR video. I'll post a link to that video in the description box below, where she has read some very good books, and you definitely can check if you could find any of the books which she selected for her TBR. So those would be the recommendations for the main participation criteria. You just have to read 2 of these books, or you can listen to the audiobook. you today, and do let me know if you do find the Nightingale August challenge interesting and if you would like to participate in it. And I would meet you soon in another video. So till then, take care, have a good reading week ahead, and namaste.